The reception hall hummed with tense conversation as Earth's representatives mingled with the coalition delegation. Elena observed how the aliens clustered together, rarely separating to engage individually with humans, pack behavior that Dr. Chen had predicted. Their environmental suits had finally been removed after a theatrical scanning ritual, revealing physiologies as diverse as their temperaments. Fascinating architecture, remarked Zex Tyrell, the Coalition's chief cultural officer. Quite impressive for a species so young. Elena nodded politely. We find that necessity drives innovation. Our history has been eventful. Yes, we reviewed your conflicts. Remarkably destructive for your development stage. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in an asymmetrical pattern that Elena recognized as condescension. Most species require guidance to survive such phases. We're stubborn learners, Elena replied, noting how the coalition members subtly positioned recording devices throughout the reception. Their surveillance wasn't particularly sophisticated, or perhaps they simply didn't care if humans noticed. Defense Minister Vargas appeared at Elena's side, champagne glass in hand. He'd been a controversial choice for the Welcome Committee, a decorated military commander rather than a career diplomat. But now Elena understood the Council's strategy. Captain Rice is being modest, Vargas said, his smile never reaching his eyes. Humanity's greatest strength is our adaptability. We've survived extinction-level events, both natural and self-inflicted. Kralvosh, the Coalition's military director, joined their circle. His species resembled upright felines with reinforced exoskeletons along critical areas. Evolution's answer to both predator and prey adaptations. Minister Vargas, your defense systems appear primarily atmospheric. How do you manage extraplanetary threats? We manage, Vargas replied simply. Elena caught the micro-expression that flashed across Kralvosh's features, disappointment masked quickly by diplomatic indifference. He'd been fishing for information and received nothing useful. As the reception continued, Elena excused herself momentarily, stepping into a secluded alcove where General Santos waited with a secure tablet. They're scanning everything, Santos whispered, showing Elena the electromagnetic activity readings. Energy signatures, material compositions, even biological samples from the food. Let them, Elena replied. They're seeing exactly what we've prepared for them to see. The Coalition flagship is deploying microsatellites in high orbit. They're claiming standard communication protocols. Elena nodded. Surveillance network. Predictable. Are our countermeasures active? Yes. They'll receive carefully curated data streams. Nothing classified will leak. When Elena returned to the reception, she found Coalition Science Minister Threndor engaged in animated conversation with Earth's leading quantum physicist, Dr. Lakshmi Patel. The alien's excitement was palpable. Your understanding of dimensional physics is unexpected, Threndor was saying. These theories align with principles we discovered centuries ago. Dr. Patel smiled demurely. Sometimes parallel development occurs across different species. The universe whispers its secrets to anyone who listens carefully enough. Elena caught Dr. Patel's subtle hand signal. The Coalition representative had revealed more than intended in his enthusiasm. Something worth investigating later. As the evening concluded, Supreme Counselor Exaltec of the Coalition approached Elena, towering over her with his impressively armored frame. Captain Rice, your hospitality honors us. We look forward to guiding Earth toward its rightful place among civilized worlds. Elena performed the Coalition's formal gesture of respect, a motion she had practiced for weeks. We look forward to learning from your wisdom, Counselor. Earth has always valued knowledge, wherever we find it. Behind her diplomatic smile, Elena catalogued everything she had observed tonight. The Coalition's arrogance was an exploitable weakness. Their underestimation of humanity might prove their most critical mistake. The wolves had arrived thinking they'd found sheep. They hadn't noticed the shepherds were actually hunters in disguise. Elena studied the holographic display in the secure briefing room beneath the diplomatic quarters. The three-dimensional map tracked coalition movement patterns throughout the Earth facilities they'd been granted access to, and several they hadn't. "They're getting bolder," Commander Rashid noted, highlighting unauthorized access attempts from the previous night. "This one bypassed 3 security checkpoints before we redirected them." "What were they after?" Elena asked. "Military deployment information, force distribution, weapons capabilities, command structure." Rashid manipulated the display to show a different dataset. "But look at their search patterns. They're specifically interested in our planetary defense systems, or rather, our apparent lack of them." Dr. Chen stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "They're working from a predictable assessment matrix. Each of the coalition species evolved as apex predators on their respective worlds. Their psychological profiles suggest they categorize other species as either threats, assets, or inconsequential. They've placed us firmly in the asset category." "Assets to be exploited," Elena murmured. "Precisely. Their evolutionary history never required them to develop genuine cooperation with perceived lesser species." Chen displayed comparative anatomical scans. "Note these neurological patterns. Coalition species show minimal activation in regions associated with empathy when interacting with non-coalition members." Elena turned as Admiral Wei entered the room. His usually stern expression seemed especially grave today. "The coalition trade delegates have submitted their partnership proposal," Wei announced, projecting the document onto the main screen. "They're requesting exclusive mining rights to 37% of our rare earth elements, preferential access to our water reserves, and authority to establish security outposts in 12 strategic locations, including the Marianas installation." Elena asked. Wei nodded. "That and Mount Chimborazo. They're targeting our primary defense coordination centers while pretending not to know what they are." "Their scans must have detected something," Rashid suggested. "Only what we wanted them to find," Wei replied. "Decoy systems operating at 15% capacity, enough to appear functional but deliberately inefficient." Elena studied the coalition proposal more carefully. "These security outposts are positioned to create a comprehensive surveillance network. They could monitor all global communications and track movement anywhere on the planet. Classic encirclement strategy," Wei confirmed. "They've used it on at least 7 other worlds we know of." Dr. Chen pulled up additional files. "Their behavioral patterns during negotiations are increasingly revealing. Note this micro-expression when Ambassador Threndar discusses mutual protection. There's involuntary muscle contraction indicating deception." "They believe we're accepting their narrative," Elena said. "More than that," Chen replied. "They believe we're incapable of recognizing their true intentions. Their evolutionary history as apex predators has left them with a significant blind spot. They cannot conceive that perceived lesser species might be studying them as intently as they study us." Elena turned to Admiral Wei. "What's the status of the Sentinel network?" "Fully operational but maintaining stealth protocols. The Coalition's deep space scans haven't detected anything beyond our public satellite grid and our contingency measures." Wei's expression hardened, ready to deploy within 3 minutes of authorization. Elena nodded, decision made. "Intensify Operation Looking Glass. Let's give them more breadcrumbs to follow, carefully selected information that reinforces their assumptions about our capabilities." Playing into their superiority complex, Chen observed with a slight smile. "Exactly. Their arrogance blinds them to the possibility that we might be leading them precisely where we want them to go." Elena studied the star chart showing coalition territory. "Every predator has weaknesses. We just need to keep them feeling confident until we identify theirs." As the meeting concluded, Elena received an alert. Coalition representatives had requested an urgent meeting to discuss concerning security deficiencies in Earth's orbital defense network. "Right on schedule," she murmured, straightening her uniform. "Time to continue the performance." Admiral Wei guided Elena through the subterranean facility's final security checkpoint. The massive doors parted silently, revealing a command center unlike anything acknowledged in Earth's official records. Holographic displays surrounded a central strategic table where operators monitored systems extending far beyond Earth's atmosphere. "Welcome to Prometheus Station," Wei said quietly. "What you're about to see is classified beyond your current clearance, but the Council has granted special authorization given your position with the Coalition delegation." Elena took in the scale of the operation with carefully controlled surprise. "How long has this been operational?" 15 years for this facility. The network itself began deployment after the Unified Defense Pact of 2097. We gestured toward the tactical display. "We've been tracking Coalition movements across 3 sectors. Their patrol patterns suggest they've been observing Earth for nearly a decade before making contact." A young officer approached with a secure tablet. "Admiral, we've completed analysis of the communications intercepted from the Coalition flagship." Wei reviewed the data before passing it to Elena. "They've scheduled a fleet movement. 17 warships redirected to our sector under the guise of a ceremonial welcome for Earth's induction." "Ceremonial with enough firepower to glass half a continent," Elena noted dryly. "Precisely our assessment." Wei activated a different display showing the solar system's outer reaches. Thousands of small signatures appeared, arranged in a complex defensive grid extending from the Kuiper Belt inward. This is what they must never discover until it's too late. The Aegis Network, autonomous defense platforms using phase shift technology to remain undetectable to conventional scans. Elena studied the display with new appreciation. These capabilities exceed anything the Coalition believes we possess by centuries. Necessity breeds innovation, Captain. Humanity nearly destroyed itself twice. We learned our lessons. Wei's expression darkened. After the resource wars, Earth's nations realized that our survival required not just cooperation, but preparation for threats beyond our atmosphere. Dr. Chen joined them, carrying new data modules. "We've completed psychological profiles on the primary Coalition representatives. Their confidence borders on pathological. They genuinely cannot conceive that a developing species might have technology surpassing theirs. A weakness we continue to exploit," Elena said. "Indeed, their latest scans of our defensive systems have been fed exactly what Operation Looking Glass intended. Evidence of moderately advanced technology with significant vulnerabilities." Chen displayed comparison charts. "The Coalition believes our planetary defense consists of these atmospheric interceptors and ground-based energy weapons." Wei activated another display showing Earth's actual defensive capabilities. A multi-layered system of orbital platforms, dimensional phase shift technology, and quantum-linked response units that could deploy anywhere in the solar system within seconds. "Our greatest advantage remains their ignorance," Wei said. "They believe themselves wolves among sheep, never suspecting they've wandered into a preserve maintained by something far more dangerous." Elena moved to a different section of the command center where technicians monitored Coalition communications. "Have they begun preparations for the Development Acceleration Protocol?" A senior analyst nodded grimly. "Supply ships have been rerouted carrying materials consistent with orbital bombardment preparations. Based on patterns observed in previous subjugations, they're approximately 2 weeks from implementation. Then we continue as planned," Elena decided. Operation Looking Glass proceeds. We appear cooperative but increasingly concerned about their military presence. Meanwhile, we finalize preparations for the contingency response. Wei's expression remained impassive, but something like satisfaction flickered in his eyes. "The Coalition believes they're watching us through their surveillance. They haven't realized they're actually looking into a mirror we designed specifically for them, seeing only what we want them to see." Elena nodded, understanding the elegant deception at work. "They believe conquest is imminent. They have no idea they're being tested, and failing spectacularly," Dr. Chen added quietly. Elena studied the holographic assembly schematics floating above the planning table. Her infiltration team, 6 specialists chosen for their unique abilities, reviewed the approach vectors to the Coalition flagship. Their internal security relies heavily on biometric identification, Commander Rashid explained, highlighting critical junctions in the ship's layout. Fortunately, Dr. Chen's team has developed functional mimetic interfaces based on the biological samples we've collected during their diplomatic visits. Dr. Chen activated a small device on his wrist. His hand shimmered briefly before appearing to transform into the three-digited appendage of a coalition officer. Superficial scanning will register appropriate genetic markers and thermal patterns. Deep scanning would reveal the deception, but their internal systems aren't designed to detect what they don't believe possible. Time constraints? Elena asked. The interfaces will maintain integrity for approximately 4 hours before molecular degradation begins, Chen replied. More than sufficient for our objectives. Lieutenant Kazuki, their systems specialist, pulled up the Coalition's network architecture. Their quantum encryption is sophisticated but predictable. Their species rely on binary-based mathematics. They haven't explored the tri-state quantum solutions our systems implemented decades ago. Can you access their secure databases undetected? Elena asked. Temporarily, Kazuki confirmed. I've identified 3 potential access points where we can establish quantum entanglement bridges. Once linked, we can extract data for approximately 12 minutes before their security protocols detect the intrusion. Elena nodded. Focus on command communications, fleet movements, and historical mission parameters. We need confirmation of their tactics against previous species. The briefing continued as each team member outlined their role in the operation. Marine Captain Winters would provide tactical support. Dr. Patel would analyze their propulsion systems. Specialist Santos would map their weapons capabilities. The Coalition believes their flagship impenetrable, Elena said, concluding the briefing. Their overconfidence is our greatest advantage. Remember, this is reconnaissance only. We gather intelligence and withdraw undetected. As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Admiral Wei approached Elena privately. The United Earth Council has reviewed your operation parameters, he said quietly. They've authorized a secondary objective. Elena waited, sensing the weight of what would follow. If you find evidence confirming the Coalition's hostile intentions, you are authorized to deploy quantum marker beacons at these coordinates. Wei transferred the data to her secure tablet. These will allow our defense grid to bypass their shield harmonics when activated. Elena studied the information carefully. You're preparing for direct confrontation. We're preparing for all contingencies, Wei corrected. The Council hopes diplomacy prevails, but the Coalition's historical patterns suggest a 97% probability they will attempt military coercion. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the diplomatic corps. Coalition Ambassador Threndar had requested an emergency meeting with Earth's representatives. Their timeline is accelerating, Wei observed. Elena checked the deployment schedule for the infiltration operation. We launch in 6 hours. I'll keep the ambassador occupied while preparations continue. Be careful, Captain, Wei warned. Their demeanor has shifted since their deep space scans were completed yesterday. Intelligence suggests they believe they've fully assessed our defensive capabilities. Let them believe they know our measure, Elena replied. Their certainty is their vulnerability. Later, as Elena walked toward the diplomatic chamber, she received confirmation that her team's equipment had been successfully transported to the launch site. The infiltration vessel, a stealth craft using reverse-engineered Coalition technology, was ready. The Coalition had spent months studying humanity. Now it was time for humanity to study them more intimately. From inside their most secure stronghold, the infiltration team moved through the Coalition flagship's maintenance tunnels with practiced precision. Their mimetic interfaces functioned perfectly, fooling the automated security systems into registering them as authorized maintenance drones, a classification the Coalition considered too menial to monitor closely. Security checkpoint ahead, Lieutenant Kazuki whispered through their secure comm system. 3 guards, standard rotation protocol. Elena checked the schematic on her tactical display. Alternate route through the thermal regulation conduit. Negative, Commander Rashid replied. That section is currently active. Temperatures exceed survival parameters. Dr. Chen studied the biochemical readings from his scanner. The guards are from species variant 4, Orcs. They possess enhanced olfactory sensitivity, but limited peripheral vision. Understood. Elena signaled the team to hold position while she retrieved a small canister from her equipment. Atmospheric modulator. It'll temporarily saturate their scent receptors with maintenance chemicals. The team waited as Elena deployed the device. Within moments, the guards were rubbing their nasal ridges uncomfortably, their attention diverted from routine surveillance. Move now, Elena ordered. Maintain formation Delta. They slipped past the checkpoint and continued toward their primary objective, the Coalition's secure archives. According to their intelligence, these archives contained complete records of Coalition expansion throughout the galaxy, including detailed accounts of species subjugation. When they reached the archive entrance, Kazuki interfaced with the security system. Impressive encryption. Multi-layered quantum locks with biological verification requirements. Can you bypass it? Elena asked. Not directly. Kazuki extracted a specialized device from his pack. But I can initiate a maintenance diagnostic cycle that will temporarily suspend security protocols. While Kazuki worked, Elena noticed Dr. Chen studying a nearby terminal with unusual intensity. Captain, he called softly. You should see this. The terminal displayed communications between various Coalition vessels, including several marked with designations they hadn't previously encountered. These aren't military or diplomatic frequencies, Chen explained. They appear to be encrypted channels used by a faction within the Coalition itself. Elena scanned the partial communications. Though heavily encoded, certain phrases appeared repeatedly. Ethical concerns, intervention necessity, and reformation protocols. There's internal dissent, she realized. A faction questioning leadership directives. Archives accessible. Kazuki announced before they could investigate further. Security suspension active for 11 minutes. The team moved swiftly into the archive chamber. Commander Rashid established their quantum entanglement bridge, while Dr. Patel and Specialist Santos began data extraction. Focus on historical conquest patterns first, Elena directed. Then Coalition military protocols. The information flow began immediately, revealing centuries of methodical expansion. Each subjugated species followed an identical pattern. Initial diplomatic contact, technological assessment, resource evaluation, followed by either voluntary integration or developmental acceleration. Their euphemism for military intervention. Cross-reference species termination events, Elena instructed. Santos complied, pulling up records of 3 civilizations that had been systematically dismantled after refusing Coalition terms. The evidence was undeniable. Precision strikes against population centers, critical infrastructure destruction, followed by emergency humanitarian assistance that established permanent Coalition control. They're planning the same for Earth, Rashid observed grimly, highlighting upcoming fleet movements. 17 warships positioned for containment protocols if diplomatic efforts fail. Download complete, Kazuki reported. 9 minutes remaining before security reactivation. Elena made a decision. Implement secondary objective. Place quantum markers at designated coordinates. As the team deployed the microscopic beacons that would allow Earth's defense systems to target critical Coalition systems, Elena returned to the communications terminal Chen had discovered. Can you identify the dissident faction leaders? She asked. Chen worked quickly, correlating communication patterns. 3 primary figures. Admiral Krell of the Science Vessel Horizon, Ambassador Vexnor from the Diplomatic Corps, and Counselor Thrix of the Ethical Oversight Committee. Download their complete profiles, Elena ordered, and copy all communications between them. This unexpected discovery changed everything. Internal division within the Coalition meant potential allies, or at least parties who might be receptive to evidence of their leadership's atrocities. As the team completed their mission and began extraction, Alina realized they'd uncovered not just the means to defend Earth, but possibly the key to fracturing the coalition from within. The United Earth Council war room fell silent as the massive holographic display tracked the coalition battle fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 23 warships arranged in attack formation, their energy signatures pulsing with charged weapon systems. Their approach vector indicates standard encirclement tactics, Admiral Wei observed. Their positioning for optimal planetary bombardment coverage. Alina studied the tactical display, mentally calculating trajectories and firing solutions. For months, humanity had maintained the illusion of technological inferiority. Now that carefully crafted deception would face its ultimate test. Coalition flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies, Lieutenant Kazuki announced. Incoming transmission. The central screen activated, revealing Commander Threll of the Coalition military. His exoskeletal ridges were fully extended, a physiological sign of dominance display in his species. Representatives of Earth, Threll began, his translator barely masking the condescension in his tone. The Galactic Coalition has determined your world requires accelerated development protocols. You will immediately surrender control of your defense systems, resource management, and governmental authority to Coalition oversight. Alina stepped forward. Commander Threll, this is Captain Alina Reyes of Earth Diplomatic Corps. We request time to consult with our leadership regarding your proposal. Threll's mouth parts twitched in barely concealed amusement. You have 1 hour to comply, after which we will implement necessary measures to ensure cooperation. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in momentary silence. All preparations complete? Alina asked. Admiral Wei nodded. Defense grid at full readiness. Operation Lighthouse awaits your command. Alina turned to Dr. Chen. What's the status of our communication with the dissident faction? Admiral Krell has acknowledged receipt of our evidence package, Chen replied. 5 coalition vessels show command-level communication disruptions consistent with potential mutiny preparations. It's time, Alina said quietly, addressing the assembled Earth leadership. For months, we've allowed the coalition to believe us technologically primitive. We fed their arrogance while studying their weaknesses. Now we demonstrate the error of their assumptions. The United Earth Council President stepped forward. Captain Rice, you are authorized to initiate defensive protocols. Remember, our objective is deterrence, not destruction. Alina nodded, then activated the command channel. Initiate Operation Lighthouse. Authorization Reyes Omega-7. Throughout the solar system, hidden defense platforms phased into normal space. Thousands of them, arranged in a complex 3-dimensional grid that completely surrounded the coalition fleet. Simultaneously, the quantum entanglement devices planted during the infiltration mission activated, temporarily disrupting shield harmonics aboard the coalition flagship. Earth vessels executing synchronized microjump. Admiral Wei announced. In perfect coordination, Earth's previously hidden battle group materialized alongside each coalition ship, appearing from dimensional shift with pinpoint precision. Instead of opening fire, each human vessel transmitted a simple message across all coalition frequencies. We could have fired. Remember this courtesy. On the tactical display, Alina watched as confusion rippled through the coalition formation. Their sensors, suddenly registering thousands of defense platforms and advanced human vessels that had been completely invisible moments before, struggled to process the tactical reality. Commander Threll's face appeared again on the main screen, his exoskeletal ridges now flattened against his skull in a physiological sign of shock. This is impossible. Our scans detected nothing approaching this level of technology. You saw what we allowed you to see, Commander, Alina replied calmly. A courtesy you mistook for weakness. Threll's composure fractured. Coalition vessels, open fire, target their command ships. 3 coalition warships launched energy weapons, only to watch in apparent disbelief as their attacks were caught in containment fields, the destructive energy harmlessly redirected. Elena opened a channel to the entire Coalition fleet. That was your first and final warning shot. The next will be answered in kind. On the tactical display, 5 Coalition vessels suddenly changed formation, breaking away from Threll's command structure and taking positions that effectively blocked the flagship's firing solutions. Admiral Krell's voice broadcast across all channels. Coalition vessels, stand down. I am assuming emergency command under Ethical Protocol Section 7. Commander Threll is hereby relieved for violations of the non-subjugation directives. The Coalition formation began to fracture as ships took positions against each other, revealing the deep divisions Elena's team had discovered and exploited. Humanity's message had been delivered not with destruction, but with something far more powerful, irrefutable proof that their courtesy had never been submission, but simply the patience of a vastly more capable species. Elena's diplomatic shuttle approached the Coalition flagship where Admiral Krell had established his provisional command. Through the viewport, she observed the transformed solar system battlefield. Coalition vessels divided into opposing formations, with the reformist faction creating a protective barrier between Earth and the hardliner ships still loyal to Commander Threll. Remarkable how quickly allegiances shift when confronted with evidence of moral failure, Dr. Chen observed, reviewing intelligence reports on his tactical pad. 5 additional Coalition vessels have declared support for Admiral Krell in the past hour. The foundation of their power was perception, Elena replied. Once shattered, the entire structure begins to collapse. The shuttle docked with precise automated movements. Elena led her small delegation, Dr. Chen, Commander Rashid, and Ambassador Vargas, into the Coalition vessel. The interior architecture reflected the Coalition's multi-species composition. Adaptive environments transitioning between atmospheric conditions optimized for different physiologies. Admiral Krell awaited them in the command center. Unlike Commander Threll's aggressive posture during previous encounters, Krell's body language conveyed cautious respect. Captain Reyes, he greeted them, performing a formal gesture Elena recognized from ancient Coalition diplomatic protocols, one rarely offered to non-Coalition species. Your demonstration was enlightening. As was your intervention, Admiral, Elena responded. Your courage in challenging your leadership likely prevented considerable bloodshed. Krell's four-fingered hand gestured toward a holographic display showing real-time updates from across Coalition territory. The quantum intrusion you planted in our network has spread faster than we could have contained, even if we wished to. 23 systems now have access to the complete records of conquest and subjugation. The display showed footage from Coalition homeworlds, massive demonstrations as citizens discovered decades of deception. Government buildings surrounded by protesters, military vessels blockaded by civilian ships. The Supreme Council has declared emergency protocols, Krell continued. They're claiming the evidence is fabricated by Earth as an act of war. Are they being believed? Ambassador Vargas asked. Increasingly less so, Krell replied, especially as more officers from the ethical oversight committees come forward with corroborating testimony. His expression shifted, mandibles tightening in what Elena had learned to recognize as reluctant admiration. Your species' strategy was unprecedented. You outmaneuvered us completely. Before Elena could respond, emergency alerts flashed across the command displays. Commander Rashid moved quickly to one of the sensor stations, working alongside Coalition officers. Hardliner vessels are launching long-range weapons, he reported tensely. Planet killer class. Trajectory indicates Earth as target. Admiral Krell rushed to the weapons console. Intercept immediately. All defensive systems. Unable to achieve targeting lock, a Coalition officer reported frantically. They're using experimental phase-shifting technology to mask their approach vector. Elena exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen, then activated her secure communication device. This is Captain Reyes. Authorization sequence, Phoenix 7 Delta. Activate quantum barrier grid. Throughout the solar system, previously unseen defense satellites activated simultaneously, creating an interlocking energy pattern that enveloped Earth in a translucent shield. The planet-killer weapons struck the barrier and simply vanished. Matter-energy conversion, Elena explained to the astonished coalition officers. Your weapons now power our defense systems. Admiral Krell stared at the display in disbelief. You anticipated even this desperate move. We studied your history thoroughly, Elena replied calmly, including previous incidents where cornered coalition commanders deployed forbidden weapons rather than accept defeat. The command center fell silent as new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. Vessels of unfamiliar design were emerging from faster-than-light travel throughout the solar system. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Who are they? Ambassador Vargas asked. Dr. Chen smiled as he reviewed the identification signals. They're responding to the call we sent through the Coalition network. Ships from species the Coalition had subjugated, arriving to witness the beginning of a new galactic order. Admiral Krell's expression reflected the profound realization transforming the Coalition, that their presumed dominance had always been built on carefully managed perceptions rather than absolute power. And humanity had just shattered those perceptions beyond repair. Earth's orbital diplomatic station had never hosted such a diverse gathering. Representatives from 27 species filled the Grand Assembly chamber, their physiologies as varied as their histories. Former victims of coalition expansion sat alongside coalition reformists, united by the unprecedented opportunity to reshape galactic governance. Elena, now formally appointed as Earth's first galactic ambassador, surveyed the gathering from a quiet observation alcove. In the 3 weeks since the standoff in Earth's orbit, the galaxy's political landscape had transformed more dramatically than anyone could have predicted. Nervous? Admiral Wei asked, joining her. Cautiously optimistic, Elena replied. The coalition hardliners have been contained, but centuries of dominance don't disappear overnight. True enough, but you've given the galaxy something it desperately needed. And what's that? A third option, Wei said simply. Before Earth, species faced binary choices: submit to coalition rule or face destruction. You showed there was another path. The chamber's notification chimes sounded, signaling the session's beginning. Elena took her position at the central podium, facing the assembled delegates. Distinguished representatives, she began, we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, nor as dominant and submissive species, but as equals with a shared future. The translation systems conveyed her words across 57 different biological communication systems simultaneously. Humanity maintained the appearance of technological inferiority not from fear, but from wisdom. History taught us the danger of displaying strength before understanding the battlefield. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's actual defensive capabilities, including technologies that even the most advanced coalition scientists had deemed theoretical. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. We chose courtesy not from weakness, but from strategy. We studied your histories, your tactics, your vulnerabilities, not to conquer, but to ensure we would never be conquered. Ambassador Vex Nor of the Coalition Reform faction rose to speak. Earth's actions have forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our civilization's expansion. The evidence Captain Rice uncovered cannot be denied. The Coalition leadership violated our own founding principles of ethical governance. Representatives from formerly subjugated worlds shared their experiences of Coalition conquest, stories that had previously been suppressed by careful information control. With each testimony, the case for fundamental change grew stronger. By day's end, the Assembly had established the framework for the Galactic Concordat, a new interstellar governance structure founded on principles of sovereignty and mutual defense, with strict prohibitions against the subjugation tactics that had built the coalition. As the delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Frixnall, an elder from one of the formerly subjugated species, approached Elena in the diplomatic station's garden observatory. Earth hung like a blue jewel against the backdrop of stars. You humans remain, Unsettling, she said, her translator struggling to convey the complex emotional undertones of her native language. You could have dominated the coalition at any time. Elena smiled and offered the traditional greeting of Thrixnel's people, a gesture the coalition had never bothered to learn in centuries of occupation. The elder's eyes widened in surprise. Domination requires constant vigilance against inevitable rebellion. Elena replied. Partnership offers something far more valuable. And what is that? Thrixnel asked. Peaceful sleep, knowing your allies watch while you rest. The elder studied Earth through the observatory window. Your world is beautiful, yet you developed such formidable defenses. Perhaps because it is beautiful, Elena suggested. The things most worth protecting often are. Thrixnel made a sound her species had almost forgotten. Laughter. Courtesy with teeth, she observed. Perhaps that is what the galaxy has needed all along. As the diplomatic gathering concluded, ships departed for worlds across the galaxy, carrying news of the Concordat. The Coalition's empire of fear was being dismantled, replaced by something unprecedented. An alliance of equals bound not by force but by mutual respect. Earth had delivered its message to the galaxy's mightiest. Courtesy had never been submission, merely the patience of a species that understood the true nature of strength.